Now we're ready for section 2, in which the emphasis is on functions. You've done a spreadsheet now, and we used some formulas. Now we want to look at functions, in particular how to use them in Excel. Excel has hundreds of functions, and you can even buy special packages that contain other ones that are specific to a discipline. Excel was initially designed for business, but has become standard in engineering and science applications also. So, for example, raising, e to the x, which you run into in calculus and physics and engineering a lot, is the irrational number e raised to the power, and that's your exp function. Then there'll be parentheses and something inside that we call the argument. It can be one argument or multiple arguments. So here's some functions in Excel. You can raise the power without it. It'll give you the same thing. Like you said, they're all equivalent. Trig functions in particular, you got your sine, cosine, tangent, and your inverse functions. For the regular trig functions, you need to make sure and remember that Excel wants the angle in radians. And typically, you're going to input an angle in degrees, and then you'll translate it. And you can translate it a number of different ways. You can do, times pi over 180, or there's a function called radians that will convert it for you. So like up here, there's something in A5, you're going to assume that's degrees. And so radians of A5 will first convert it and then take the cosine. Statistical functions in this next EX2, we'll do some statistical functions also. There is no cube root, but that's because you can do the power to the 1/3, right? So, in Canvas, in the assignment, there is a template. So you don't have to type everything, and that will have some of the stuff, you can everybody start off the same. It's called example 10.2. You can download it either from My Engineering Lab if you go to the text, my video and template, or you can download it from the Canvas assignment where I have it loaded. We'll add it. What I would do is save it, download it, open it up, save it as another name, the name you're going to use for EX2, because we're going to add another tab into it. It'll have multiple tabs on it by the time we're done. So it should look like this. And the reason I wanted you to download the template is because we got all these numbers. They go down to like 108. So we didn't want you to type all that in. I want you to add your name to it up here. And that's our starting template. So again, save it. All right, so what I want you to do is go to cell D4 by total accidents, and we're going to use one of the statistical formulas or one of the numerical formulas, sum BB. Now, there's a couple of ways to specify arguments. It'll do a whole range, and so what this is, B colon B says do everything in column B, and it's going to ignore anything that's not a number. Or you can type B5 to B108 with this colon, or you can type equals sum parentheses and then highlight and drag B5 to 108. However you do it, then you ought to get that number for total accidents if you've summed all of those numbers. Okay? Now save it. As soon as you get something in there, every time you do something you like, hit the save button. The gremlins are going to get you if you don't. Microsoft will lock up on you. Add the following in D5. Count, we're simply going to count those that contain a number. And again, you can do the whole column and it only counts the one with numbers, ignores your headings, or you can specify exactly what you want it to count by either typing it or highlighting it. And when you do, there should be a whole 104. So yeah, a lot of numbers to type if you did it by hand. We'd have a hard time getting all the same numbers. So, all right, now go to D6. We're going to do an average. Mean and average. The function name is average. Remember, it starts with an equals, average, and B colon B, or again, highlight, or type in or highlight. And since we're not going to be copying it, we don't need to make it absolute. But that's the mean I get. Now, that may be too many numbers, and I can change what's displayed, but what we did earlier is you can go with just what it shows, but it doesn't change it internally. If you're going to use that average number and you need it to the right significant figures for a later calculation, then what you want to do is round it internally to the right number of digits. And there's a function called, there's actually two. There's a round up and a round. They work similar. Round up is the one he says to use in the book, and it'll look at a number and round it. If it's below 0.5, then it'll round it down. If it's above, it'll round it up. So what we'll do is we'll make equals round up. We'll go and edit your cell or retype it in D6, and it's going to equal round parentheses. We're going to put the average. Now round has two, that's a little bit of a typo there. It has two, let me fix that real quick. Let me pause this for a second. All right. So I went and fixed it because it's got two arguments. One is the cells, the cell range, and the other is the digits, or cell or number. And so we're just going to do it in the cell we're in. And so that's the one that's got average in it. You'll put parentheses all the way around them both. So I've got one function as an argument of another function. So that's the number it's going to round. In this case, just a single number. And then we'll do comma 0. The digits is the digits to the right of the decimal. And when we do that, then you can see it rounds it to 0 digits, which gives us 3 significant figures. And there's round and round up. Again, save it. Gremlins are after you. Now repeat in the ones below on the sheet. You want to calculate the median. The median, remember, is the one that's in the middle in the sense that there's as many smaller than as there are greater than. We're going to use the variance, which is a statistical thing, which tells you how broad the distribution is. And you need to do var.p because there's a number of different variant functions, and .p is the principal variant that we want, and then the standard deviation. So add those to your sheet, and when you do, you should get that. Okay? Those are all, those are statistical functions. Again, I would save it. All right, now what we want to do is make a decision. We want to do a count, but we only count ones that are, say, bigger than some number. Because if you look at our sheet, he wants to know the number bigger than the average. And so that's count if. I don't know what Dale's is. Let me pause it. There's another typo. Cells. Count cells in the range that meet the criteria. We're going to look at the range B, column B, everything greater than, need your quotes, and symbol, and D6. So if we add that to our sheet in E5, then you can see what it's doing. Samples greater than the mean, so, and D6. So it's going to look at D6. It's going to look at each one, and it's only going to count them if they're bigger than the mean, which is, there's 56 of them. And again, you can do the whole column, or you can specify the ones that you want. And again, you can either type that or highlight it. Okay? And you could use a less than, you could use greater than or equal to, anything between the quotes. The and symbol tells it you want to do it. This is applied to whatever cell that you have there. Now in E8, we want to count the sample between. So a couple of changes. First off, it's count if S, and then we've still got our range, and then we're going to go greater or equal to F7, and then the range less than G7. So that's your syntax there. Note that it ends in an S. It's count if S, and that's basically, which is greater than F7 and less than G7, that's between, and that's what we're looking for. And it says samples between 180 and 200. And if we type that in there, you can see that's what I've typed, then there's 9. Of that 104 numbers, 9 of them are between 180 and 200. So we could, gather any particular sample we wanted and see. Okay? Now, again, you probably want to save it. And there's our syntax on those. There's multiple count functions that do different things. You can count the number of cells that are not blank. You can count the ones that have a number. You can count if and count ifs. It'll also handle error messages. I didn't really add that, but you can look over that. There's a if error. If there's an error, if something comes up an error like that, you try to divide by 0, then you can tell it what to do in case there's an error like put a blank. All right, I'm going to pause the video and we'll make a new one, and I'll show you what else I want you to put into that ex2 file.